The shuttle doors opened with a soft hiss, and Jake Morrison stepped onto Luna Station. The first thing that hit everyone was how different he looked. 10 years ago, when the aliens captured him, Jake had been a young captain with bright eyes and a quick smile. Now he moved like water, smooth and careful, and his face carried lines that spoke of things no human should have seen. Admiral Lisa Carter waited at the front of the welcoming group. Behind her stood reporters, doctors, and military officers who had all come to see Earth's first returned prisoner of war. They expected him to stumble, to cry, to fall into someone's arms. Instead, Jake looked around the room and spoke in a voice that sounded like music mixed with grinding stone. Keth Morvani Solthek Navris, he said, the alien words rolling off his tongue perfectly. Then he paused, as if remembering where he was. I mean, it is good to be home. The crowd went silent. Even Admiral Carter, who had fought the Kethavar Empire for 15 years, had never heard their language spoken so clearly by a human mouth. Jake's English came out slow and careful, like he was translating each word in his head before speaking. Captain Morrison, Admiral Carter stepped forward. Welcome back to human space. Jake nodded, but something about the gesture seemed wrong. He tilted his head slightly to the right, the way no human ever did. His eyes, which used to be bright blue now, seemed deeper and darker, as if they had seen too much. Dr. Paul Rodriguez, the base psychologist, watched from the side. He had read Jake's old files, knew the man who had been captured during the Battle of Kepler Station. That Jake Morrison had been loud and friendly, always ready with a joke. This man stood perfectly still, breathing in a rhythm that seemed too slow, too controlled. How are you feeling, Captain? Dr. Rodriguez asked, stepping closer. Jake turned to look at him, and for a moment, his expression was completely blank. Then something shifted, like he was putting on a mask. I am, well, thank you for asking. The medical team moved in next. They had expected to find a broken man, scarred and weak from years of alien torture. Instead, Jake Morrison looked healthier than his old record showed. His skin had a strange, pale quality, and when they checked his arms, they found scars that formed patterns. Not random cuts from punishment, but careful designs that looked almost decorative. What are these marks? Asked Dr. Helen Kim, the team's xenobiologist. Jake looked down at his arms as if seeing the scars for the first time. They are honor marks. The Kethvar give them to... He stopped, frowning. It is difficult to explain in your language. In our language? Admiral Carter repeated. Jake, English is your language too. Yes, Jake said quickly. Of course. I meant, it is hard to find the right words. They moved him to a private room for the first round of questions. The room was white and clean with a table and 2 chairs. Jake sat down and immediately looked uncomfortable. He kept glancing around as if searching for something that wasn't there. Tell us about your capture, Admiral Carter began. Jake was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft. The Kethvar do not think the way we think. When they took me, I believed they would kill me quickly. Instead, He paused again, searching for words. They studied me. Like a puzzle they wanted to solve. What kind of studying? Dr. Rodriguez asked. They wanted to know why humans fight the way we fight, why we destroy instead of building, why we take instead of sharing. Jake's fingers drummed on the table in a pattern that sounded almost like alien music. At first I told them nothing. I was angry and afraid. What changed? Admiral Carter leaned forward. Jake smiled, and for the first time he looked almost like his old self. I saved one of them, a young guard named Zach Thin. He was hurt badly during a fight between prisoners. I knew some medical training, so I helped him. The smile faded. That changed everything. The questions went on for hours. Jake answered some easily, but others seemed to confuse him. He could describe alien buildings in perfect detail, but couldn't remember the layout of his old ship. He knew the names of Kethavar clan leaders, but forgot the faces of his old crew members. As the day wore on, more strange things became clear. Jake ate his food in small, careful bites, the way the alien prisoners in old videos did. When he laughed, which was rare, the sound came out in 3 short bursts instead of one long one. Most disturbing of all, he sometimes stopped talking in the middle of a sentence as if listening to a voice no one else could hear. "Captain," Dr. Rodriguez said during a break, "you've been through a terrible experience. It's normal to feel confused or different after what you've endured." Jake looked at him with those dark, deep eyes. "I am not confused, Doctor. I see things clearly now, more clearly than before." He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. "The war you are fighting, it is not the war you think it is." "What do you mean?" "The Kethvar are not trying to destroy humanity. They are trying to save it." Jake turned back to face them. "They believe humans are sick, broken. They want to fix us." Admiral Carter felt a chill run down her spine. "Fix us how?" "By teaching us to be better, to think beyond ourselves, to care for the whole instead of just the parts." Jake's voice took on a strange quality, almost like he was reciting something he had memorized. "They sent me back because I proved it was possible. I am the example." The room went quiet. Outside, the war against the Kethvar Empire continued. Ships fought and died in the darkness between stars. But sitting in this white room, listening to Jake Morrison speak in his strange, careful voice, everyone began to understand that everything they thought they knew about the enemy might be wrong. Jake looked around at their shocked faces and nodded, slowly. "There is much you need to learn, and I am here to teach you. But first you must be ready to hear truths that will change everything you believe about what it means to be human." The first day of Jake Morrison's return ended with more questions than answers. But one thing was certain. The man who came back was not the same man who had been taken, and that change might be the key to ending a war that neither side truly understood. Dr. Paul Rodriguez sat across from Jake Morrison in the therapy room. 3 weeks had passed since Jake's return, and every session brought new surprises. Today, Jake seemed more relaxed, but his eyes still held that distant look, as if part of him was somewhere else. "Tell me about your first year with the Kethvar," Dr. Rodriguez said, his recorder running quietly on the table between them. Jake closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, his voice was different, younger somehow. "They kept me in a crystal cell. The walls were made of something that looked like glass, but it was alive. It could hear my thoughts and show them back to me. That must have been terrifying. It was. But also..." Jake paused, searching for words. "It was honest. Humans lie to themselves all the time. The crystal made that impossible. I had to face every angry thought, every fear, every selfish desire. There was nowhere to hide from who I really was." Commander Amy Walsh watched from behind a one-way mirror. As Earth's chief intelligence officer, she needed to know everything. Jake had learned about the enemy, but so far his reports made no sense. He could describe alien poetry but claimed he couldn't remember their weapons. He knew the names of their gods but said he forgot about their military plans. "Jake," Dr. Rodriguez continued, "what happened after the first year?" "I got sick. Very sick. The Kethvar food was wrong for my body and I was dying slowly. They didn't care at first. To them I was just another broken thing that would eventually stop working." Jake's hands moved as he spoke, making small gestures that looked alien. "But then the riot happened." "Tell me about the riot." Jake's face darkened. There were other prisoners. Not humans, but creatures from different worlds the Kethvar had conquered. They were angry and desperate. One day they tried to break out of the prison section. Guards came running, and in the fight one of them got hurt badly. Dr. Rodriguez leaned forward. This was the story Jake had mentioned on his first day, but he had never given details. His name was Zach Thin. He was young for a Kethvar, maybe the same as a 20-year-old human. A piece of metal went through his chest and green blood was everywhere. The other guards just stood there watching him die. Why didn't they help him? Because helping him would have been shameful. In Kethvar culture, if you get hurt because you made a mistake, others shouldn't save you. It teaches you to be more careful next time. Jake shook his head. But I couldn't just watch someone die, so I ran to him and used my hands to stop the bleeding. Commander Walsh made notes behind the mirror. This was the first time Jake had explained Cathvar culture in a way that made sense to human thinking. The other guards wanted to kill me for interfering, Jake continued. But I kept working on Zach Thin using basic medical training from the military. I got his breathing steady and stopped most of the bleeding. When the medical team finally arrived, he was still alive. And that changed things? Jake nodded. Zach Thin lived, but now he owed me a life debt. In Cathvar society, this created a huge problem. I was supposed to be a worthless prisoner, but I had saved the life of a clan member. The rules didn't know what to do with me. Dr. Helen Kim, the xenolinguist, entered the observation room and stood next to Commander Walsh. She had been studying recordings of Jake's speech patterns and had discovered something troubling. He's not just speaking their language, she whispered to Walsh. He's thinking in it. Look at how he moves his hands when he talks about Cathvar concepts. Those aren't human gestures. On the other side of the glass, Jake was still talking. Zach Thin became my teacher. He said that since I had saved him, he had to help me understand their ways. Otherwise, the life debt could never be repaid. What did he teach you? Everything. Their language first, but not just words. The way they think about time, about duty, about what makes life worth living. Humans think in straight lines, cause and effect, beginning and end. Cathvar think in circles. Everything connected to everything else, no real start or finish. Dr. Rodriguez was fascinated. Can you give me an example? Jake was quiet for a moment, then spoke in the alien language. The words flowed like water, musical and strange. Then he translated. The hunter who takes only what he needs feeds his children forever, but the hunter who takes everything feeds no one, not even himself. It's about balance, Dr. Rodriguez said. More than that, it's about understanding that you are part of something bigger. When humans hunt, we think about getting the biggest prize. When Cathvar hunt, they think about what the forest will look like for their great-grandchildren. Commander Walsh felt frustrated. Every answer Jake gave made the aliens sound more reasonable and humans sound more selfish. This wasn't the intelligence she needed to win a war. Jake, Dr. Rodriguez asked, did they ever torture you? Not the way you mean. They never hit me or hurt my body, but they made me see myself clearly, and that was the hardest thing I've ever experienced. Jake's voice became very quiet. Do you know what it's like to realize that everything you believed about yourself was wrong? Behind the mirror, Dr. Kim was taking rapid notes. He's showing signs of complete cultural integration, she told Walsh. This goes way beyond learning a language. His entire worldview has shifted. Is that even possible? Walsh asked. Theoretically, yes. But it usually takes generations, not just 10 years. Something extraordinary happened to him. In the therapy room, Jake was describing his 3rd year of captivity. Zach Thin brought me to the clan meetings. At first, I just listened, trying to understand their words. But slowly, I began to understand their thoughts. They weren't evil creatures trying to destroy humanity. They were parents worried about their children's future. What were they worried about? Humans. The way we spread across space, taking everything we want and leaving nothing behind. To them, we looked like a disease that would eventually kill the entire galaxy. Dr. Rodriguez felt a chill. Did they plan to wipe us out? Jake looked directly at him, and his eyes seemed infinitely sad. That was the debate. Some clan leaders wanted to destroy humanity quickly, like cutting out a cancer before it spreads. Others thought we could be healed, taught to live in harmony with other species. Which side won? Jake smiled, but it wasn't a happy expression. The side that decided to send me back. I became their proof that humans could change, could learn to think beyond themselves. They sent me home to show my people what we could become. The session ended with more questions than answers. As Jake was led back to his quarters, Commander Walsh and Dr. Kim discussed what they had learned. He's not the same species anymore, Dr. Kim said. Mentally, culturally, he's become something new, part human, part Cathvar. Is he still loyal to humanity? Walsh asked. I think he's loyal to something bigger than humanity, and that might be exactly what we need to understand if we want to survive this war. That night, Jake Morrison sat alone in his room, looking out at the stars. In his mind, he could hear Zakthin's voice teaching him the old songs, and he wondered if anyone on Earth would ever be ready to hear the truth about what was coming. Captain Sandra Blake stood outside Jake Morrison's quarters, holding a bottle of whiskey and trying to work up the courage to knock. She had served under Jake for 3 years before his capture, and back then, he would have already sensed her presence and invited her in. Now she wasn't sure if the man inside was still the same person she had known. She knocked softly. "Jake, it's Sandra." The door opened immediately as if he had been waiting. Jake stood there looking older but somehow more peaceful than she remembered. His smile was genuine but different, carrying a weight of experience that made her feel like a child. "Sandra. It's good to see a familiar face." She held up the bottle. "Thought you might want a drink. Like old times." Jake looked at the whiskey for a long moment, then stepped aside to let her in. His room was strange. The furniture had been moved into patterns that made no sense to human eyes, and the walls were covered with drawings that looked like alien writing mixed with mathematical formulas. "I don't drink alcohol anymore," Jake said, sitting cross-legged on the floor instead of in a chair. "It interferes with clear thinking. But I'm happy to talk while you drink." Sandra poured herself a glass and sat on the edge of the bed, studying her old commander. "Jake, what happened to you out there?" "I learned to see," he said simply. "The Kethvar have a saying. The child who touches fire learns faster than the one who only hears about heat. I touched their fire, and it changed me. But you're still you, right? Still human?" Jake was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was gentle but firm. "I'm something new, Sandra. Neither fully human nor Kethvar, but maybe that's what the galaxy needs right now." She took a drink, feeling the whiskey burn. "The brass thinks you're broken, some kind of alien mind control. What do you think?" Sandra looked into his dark eyes and saw something that made her shiver. There was an intelligence there that seemed older than his years, deeper than any human should possess. But there was also kindness, a peace that she envied. "I think you found something out there that the rest of us are too scared to look for." Jake smiled, and for a moment, he looked like the man she remembered. "Tell me about the war, Sandra. What's really happening?" She gave him the official reports first. Human colonies under attack, massive battles in deep space, thousands of casualties on both sides. But then she told him the things that weren't in the reports, the growing fear among the troops, the whispered rumors that the aliens were holding back, the strange dreams that soldiers reported after fighting Kethvar forces. "They're in our heads somehow," she said. "Not mind control, but influence, like they're trying to talk to us during battles instead of just killing us." Jake nodded. "They're trying to communicate, but your people interpret it as an attack. The Kethvar don't understand why humans won't listen." "Listen to what?" "To the offer of peace. Every battle is a test, Sandra. They want to see if humanity can learn to fight with honor instead of rage, to protect instead of destroy." Sandra set down her glass. "That's crazy, Jake. They're the ones who attacked us first." "Did they?" Jake stood up and walked to one of his wall drawings. It showed 2 circles, one small and chaotic, the other large and ordered. Lines connected them in complex patterns. The first contact happened at the Vega system. A human mining ship started stripping a planet that the Kethvar considered sacred. They tried to communicate, to ask the miners to stop. When that failed, they used force to protect what they valued. "So you're saying it's our fault?" "I'm saying both sides misunderstood each other from the beginning. Humans saw aliens trying to stop them from working, so they called for military help. Kethvar saw a species that destroyed beautiful things without caring, so they decided humans were dangerous." Sandra felt angry and confused. "Whose side are you on, Jake?" He turned to look at her, and his expression was infinitely patient. "I'm on the side of both species surviving. The Kethvar could have wiped out humanity years ago, Sandra. Their real weapons, their true technology. What you've seen in battles is nothing compared to what they actually possess." "Then why haven't they?" "Because they're still hoping we can be saved. Every human they capture, they study. Every battle they fight, they try to teach lessons instead of just winning. Their parents dealing with a dangerous child trying to find a way to help instead of just punishing. Sandra stood up, pacing around the strange room. This is insane. You're talking about surrender. I'm talking about evolution. The HFY offered to teach me their ways, and I accepted. Now I can see both species clearly. Humans are brilliant and creative, but also selfish and destructive. HFY are wise and patient, but also rigid and judgmental. Together, we could be something amazing. She stopped pacing and stared at him. Together? Jake, they're aliens. They're not even close to being human. Neither am I, not anymore. But that doesn't make me less than what I was, it makes me more. He walked over to another drawing, this one showing creatures that looked like a mixture of human and HFY features. I've seen their homeworld, Sandra. Cities that grow like forests, technology that works with nature instead of against it, children who learn to think about consequences 10 generations in the future. And you want us to become like them? I want us to become the best parts of both species. Human creativity guided by HFY wisdom. Their patience enhanced by our adaptability. It's possible, Sandra. I'm proof that it's possible. She sat back, down, suddenly exhausted. The military will never accept this. They want to use your knowledge to win the war. Jake knelt down in front of her, his eyes serious. If they try to use what I know to attack the HFY homeworld, it will trigger a response that will end humanity forever. The aliens have been holding back, but they won't continue to do so if they think we can't be saved. Then what do? We try something that has never been done before. We send an ambassador to the HFY who can speak their language, not just with words, but with understanding. Someone who can represent both species. Sandra realized what he was saying. You want to go back? I want to prevent a genocide, Sandra, because that's what will happen if this continues. Either the HFY will decide humanity is hopeless and destroy us all, or humans will try to destroy them and discover just how outmatched we really are. She looked around at the alien writing on his walls, at the peaceful expression on his face, at the strange grace in his movements. Jake Morrison had become something unprecedented in human history, a bridge between worlds. Will you help me convince them? He asked. Will you help me show our people that there's another way? Sandra Blake, career military officer and loyal, human, looked into the eyes of her transformed friend and made a choice that would change everything. Yes, but Jake, what if you're wrong? What if this is just some kind of alien trick? Jake smiled sadly. Then humanity will die fighting, just like we always have. But if I'm right, Sandra, if there's even a chance that we can learn to be something better, isn't that worth the risk? Outside the window, stars shone in the darkness, and somewhere among them, two species struggled to understand each other while the future of the galaxy hung in the balance. The emergency meeting was held in the deepest level of Luna Station, in a room designed to block all forms of electronic surveillance. Admiral Lisa Carter sat at the head of the table, her face grim. Around her were the most senior officers in the human fleet, and at the far end sat Jake Morrison, looking calm despite the tension in the room. General Frank Collins slammed his hand on the table. This is ridiculous. We have the first human ever to return from HFY captivity, and instead of using his knowledge to win this war, we're listening to fairy tales about alien friendship. Lieutenant Colonel Ben Torres opened a file in front of him. Actually, General, our intelligence reports are starting to confirm some of Captain Morrison's claims. 3 days ago, our deep space monitors detected energy signatures near the Centauri system that exceed anything we've recorded from HFY forces. What kind of energy signatures? Admiral Carter asked. Planet-killing levels, ma'am. Weapons that could turn an entire world into dust in minutes. But they weren't fired. The HFY fleet just sat there for 6 hours, then left. Jake spoke, quietly. They were having a debate. The War Council was deciding whether to end the conflict quickly or give humanity more time to change. Change into what? General Collins demanded. Into a species that can coexist with others instead of consuming everything it touches. Jake's voice remained patient, but his eyes were serious. General, may I ask you something? Collins nodded curtly. How many worlds has humanity colonized in the last 50 years? 43, Collins answered proudly. And how many of those worlds had existing ecosystems that were destroyed or damaged during colonization? Collins frowned. That's not relevant to military operations. All of them, Jake answered his own question. 43 worlds stripped of their natural resources, their native life forms driven to extinction or pushed aside for human expansion. The Kethvar have been watching this happen for decades. Dr. Helen Kim, who had been silent until now, leaned forward. Captain Morrison, our analysis of your language pattern shows something unprecedented. You're not just speaking Kethvar. You're thinking in concepts that don't exist in human languages. How is that possible? Jake looked at her with something like relief, as if someone had finally asked the right question. Because their way of thinking is different from ours in fundamental ways. Humans think in terms of taking, possessing, conquering. Kethvar think in terms of maintaining, sharing, preserving. He stood up and walked to the room's display screen. With quick movements, he drew 2 diagrams. The first showed arrows pointing outward from a central point, expanding in all directions. The second showed circles within circles, each connected to the others in complex patterns. This is how humans expand, he said, pointing to the first diagram. We move out, take what we need, and keep moving. This is how Kethvar think. He touched the second diagram. Everything is connected. Every action affects everything else. You can't take something without giving something back. Commander, Amy Walsh had been studying Jake's debriefing reports for weeks. Now she spoke up with barely controlled frustration. Captain, you keep telling us about their philosophy, but we need practical intelligence, military tactics, weapon specifications, fleet locations. Jake turned to face her. Commander, would you like to know why every major human offensive against Kethvar forces has failed in the last 3 years? The room went quiet. Because they know what you're going to do before you do it. Not through spying or advanced intelligence gathering, but because human military thinking is predictable. You always choose the most aggressive option, the one that causes the most damage to the enemy. General Collins stood up angrily. That's how you win wars, Captain. That's how you win wars against other humans, Jake replied calmly. But the Kethvar aren't human. They don't think like humans. They've been fighting this war like parents disciplining a child, using exactly enough force to make a point, but not enough to cause permanent harm. Lieutenant Colonel Torres looked up from his files. Are you saying they're playing with us? I'm saying they're trying to teach you. Every defeat, every loss, every time a human fleet is outmaneuvered, it's a lesson. They're trying to show humanity that there are other ways to resolve conflicts besides destruction. Admiral Carter felt a cold weight in her stomach. Jake, what happens when they decide we can't be taught? The room waited for his answer. When Jake spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. They stopped holding back. Dr. Kim pulled out her analysis tablet. Captain, based on your linguistic integration patterns, I estimate you were exposed to Kethvar high-level strategic discussions. What did they say about humanity's future? Jake closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, he looked older, sadder. There are 3 factions in the Kethvar leadership. The Mercy faction believes humans can be saved through patient teaching. The Justice faction thinks humanity must be stopped before it destroys other species. The Wisdom faction wants to wait and see if humans will change on their own. Which faction is winning? Admiral Carter asked. 6 months ago, it was Mercy. They pointed to me as proof that humans could learn. But every human attack, every colony that strips another world bare, every time your species chooses violence over cooperation, the Justice faction grows stronger. General Collins leaned forward aggressively. So what? Let them come. Humanity has never backed down from a fight. Jake looked at him with something like pity. General, humanity has never fought an enemy that could destroy your entire species with a single command. The Kethvar Empire spans 400 systems. Their technology is thousands of years ahead of yours. The only reason you still exist is because they choose to let you exist. Then why are you here? Collins demanded. Why did they send you? Back? Because the Mercy faction convinced the others to try one more time. I am their final offer, General. A human who can speak their language, understand their culture, and serve as a bridge between our species. If I fail, Jake shrugged. Then the Justice faction will have proven their point, and humanity will be classified as an irredeemable threat to galactic civilization. The room erupted in arguments. Some officers demanded that Jake be arrested as a traitor. Others wanted to use his knowledge to plan a preemptive strike. A few voices suggested that maybe, just maybe, he was telling the truth about the possibility of peace. Admiral Carter called for quiet. When the room settled, she looked directly at Jake. What do you propose we do? Send me back, Jake said simply. As Earth's first official ambassador to the Kethvar Empire, let me try to negotiate a real peace, one based on understanding instead of fear. And if you're wrong? She asked. If this is all an elaborate trap? Jake smiled sadly. Then I'll die trying to save both species from a war that will leave only ghosts among the stars. Commander Walsh stood up. Admiral, I recommend against this course of action. We can't trust someone who's been so completely compromised by alien influence. Compromised? Jake turned to look at her. Commander, I've been given a gift that no human in history has ever possessed. The ability to truly communicate with an alien intelligence. Yes, I've changed. Yes, I think differently now. But that change might be the only thing standing between humanity and extinction. Admiral Carter looked around the room at the faces of her officers. Some showed fear, others anger. A few displayed something that might have been hope. The decision she made in the next few minutes would determine the future of the human race. Captain Morrison, she said finally, prepare a detailed proposal for this diplomatic mission. I want to know exactly what you're planning to say to the Kethvar and what you think they'll say back. Jake nodded. Yes, ma'am, but Admiral, time is running out. The Justice faction grows stronger with every day that passes. If we're going to try for peace, it has to be soon. As the meeting broke up, officers filed out discussing the impossible choice they faced. Trust the word of a man transformed by alien captivity or continue a war they were slowly learning they could never win. Either way, the fate of humanity now rested in the hands of someone who was no longer entirely human himself. The shuttle carrying Jake Morrison approached the Kethvar fleet 3 weeks later. He sat alone in the pilot's seat, his hands steady on the controls despite knowing that he was flying toward either humanity's salvation or his own death. Behind him, Earth's leaders waited for word that would determine the future of their species. As the massive alien ships came into view, Jake felt a strange sense of coming home. The Kethvar vessels looked like living things, their hulls curved and flowing like the shells of deep-sea creatures. No human design could match their beauty, and no human weapon could penetrate their defenses. Incoming shuttle, identify yourself, came a voice in perfect Kethvarian. The words felt familiar on Jake's mind, like putting on comfortable old clothes. This is Jake Morrison, once prisoner of the Shining Clans, now speaker for the Earth tribes, Jake replied in the same language. I come seeking audience with the War Council. There was a long pause. Then, Morrison, who saved Zakthin. You are welcome aboard the Eternal Wisdom. Prepare for docking. The shuttle was drawn into the belly of the massive ship by gentle tractor beams. As Jake stepped out into the alien corridors, he was greeted by familiar faces. Kethvar warriors who had once guarded him now bowed their heads in respect. Their skin shimmered with colors that indicated deep emotion, blues of joy mixed with the gold of concern. Zakthin was waiting for him at the entrance to the council chambers. The young Kethvar had grown during Jake's absence, his ritual scars, now marking him as a full clan warrior. When he saw Jake, his skin flashed the brilliant white of pure happiness. My friend, Zakthin said in English, his voice carrying only a slight accent. You have returned to us at the darkest hour. How bad is it? Jake asked, switching to Kethvarian. The Justice faction has gained much support. 3 more human colonies have stripped worlds of all life in the past month. The War Council meets today to decide humanity's fate. Jake felt his heart sink. And the Mercy faction? Grows weaker with each report of human destruction. But your return may yet tip the balance. Come, they wait for you. The council chamber was a vast spherical room where hundreds of Kethvar clan leaders floated in the air, their positions showing their political alignments. Jake recognized the groups from his years of captivity, the Mercy faction glowing with soft blue light, the Justice faction burning with angry reds and oranges, and the Wisdom faction showing neutral greens and purples. At the center of the sphere floated the High Speaker, an ancient Kethvar whose skin had gone pure white with age. When Jake entered, the chamber fell silent. Jake Morrison of Earth. The High Speaker's voice carried to every corner of the chamber. You returned to us changed again. What word do you bring from your people? Jake floated to the center of the chamber using the same gravity control he had learned during his captivity. As he spoke, his words were translated instantly for the Earth listeners monitoring the transmission. High Speaker, honored clan leaders, I bring word that humanity stands at a crossroads. Some among my people have learned to see beyond themselves. Others still follow the old ways of taking and consuming. But all of them now know the truth, that the Kethvar could have destroyed us at any time and chose mercy instead. A member of the Justice faction, his skin burning orange with anger, spoke up. Yet still they destroy. Even now human ships strip another world bare, caring nothing for the life they extinguish. Jake nodded sadly. This is true. But consider this, honored ones. You knew my species for 10 years before you captured me. In all that time, did any human show the capacity to change as I have changed? One human among billions is not enough, another justice leader declared. We cannot wait centuries for an entire species to evolve. Then do not wait, Jake said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. Teach them as you taught me. The chamber erupted in confused murmurs. The High Speaker gestured for silence. Explain your meaning, Speaker for Earth. Jake took a deep breath. You have shown that humans can change. I am proof of this, but I am only one person and I cannot teach billions of humans what you taught me. However you could. A member of the Wisdom faction, her skin swirling with thoughtful purples, spoke carefully. You suggest we take more prisoners? I suggest we take volunteers, humans who choose to come to you to learn your ways, to become bridges between our species. Not prisoners, but students. The Justice faction leader's skin blazed with fury. Humans would never agree to this. Some would, Jake replied firmly. Not all humans are the same, just as not all Kethvar think alike. There are humans who care about the future, who want to build instead of destroy. Give them the chance to learn. From Earth, Admiral Carter's voice came through Jake's communicator. Jake, what exactly are you proposing? Jake switched to English for a moment. A cultural exchange program, Admiral. Humans who want to learn Kethvar wisdom, and Kethvar who want to understand human creativity. Together, they could create something new. He switched back to Kethavarian. I have spent months among my own people since my return. Some fear change, but others hunger for it. They know that humanity's current path leads only to destruction. They want to find a better way. The High Speaker's skin showed the deep blue of careful consideration. And if we agree to this proposal, what assurance do we have that humans will not use this knowledge to make war upon us? Jake smiled sadly. You have no assurance, High Speaker. Just as I had no assurance that showing mercy to Zakthin would not result in my death. Sometimes wisdom requires faith. The chamber fell silent. For long minutes, the clan leaders communicated among themselves in colors and subtle movements that no human eye could fully interpret. Jake floated in the center, waiting for a decision that would determine the fate of two species. Finally, the High Speaker spoke. The War Council has reached a decision. We will accept your proposal, Jake Morrison, but there will be conditions. Name them. First, any human who comes to learn our ways must come freely, with no coercion from their government. Second, they must agree to remain with us for no less than 5 Earth years. Third, those who complete their learning must return to Earth to teach others. And fourth, the High Speaker's skin showed the gold of solemn warning. If humanity continues its destructive expansion while this exchange is taking place, The Justice faction will assume humans cannot be saved and will act accordingly. Jake felt hope and terror in equal measure. How long do we have? 10 Earth years. If humanity has not shown significant change by then, the Justice faction will have proven their point. Jake nodded, knowing it was the best deal he could get. I accept these terms on behalf of my species. I volunteer to be the first permanent ambassador between our peoples. Back on Earth, Admiral Carter was already making plans. The proposal would be controversial, even revolutionary. But faced with the choice between slow change and quick extinction, humanity would have to choose adaptation. The transmission ended with Jake remaining aboard the HFY ship. As the alien fleet departed, carrying Earth's transformed sun back to his second home, people across human space began to debate the impossible choice before them. Some called Jake Morrison a traitor who had sold out his own species. Others called him humanity's greatest hero, the man who had found a path between the stars that didn't end in destruction. But everyone agreed on one thing: the old ways were ending. Humanity would either learn to become something better or cease to exist entirely. In the months that followed, the first human volunteers joined Jake aboard HFY ships. They were scientists and philosophers, artists and engineers, people who had looked at their own species and decided that change was not just necessary but inevitable. They began the long, difficult process of learning to think like their former enemies. And in the space between the stars, two species that had once seemed destined for mutual destruction began the careful work of building something that had never existed before, a truly interstellar civilization that honored both human ambition and alien wisdom. Jake Morrison, no longer fully human but not yet entirely HFY, served as the bridge between worlds that neither species could have imagined, alone. His sacrifice had bought humanity time, but whether that time would be used wisely remained to be seen. The future, as always, belonged to those brave enough to reach for it.